Welcome to the Live Life Well podcast for busy women with me, Joanne Bibby. I hope this is a place where you'll find encouragement, inspiration and community to live life well, body, mind and soul. Well, hi and welcome to this episode of the Live Life Well podcast for busy women. And I just so appreciate you taking this 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen and hear from myself, Joanne Bibby, and my wonderful guest today. And hope that just encourages you to take care of your health and well-being, body, mind and soul. And today I'm really delighted to be introducing my guest, Laura. I can't wait to hear from you today, Laura, and everything you have to share with us. Could you just introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about you, your sort of journey, and what you spend your time doing at the moment?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Laura Krasteva. I'm an artist, activist, and cultural producer. I mainly make socially engaged performance and also other cultural events and projects. I work both with professionally trained artists as well as people like me who maybe have discovered creativity at a different moment in their life or are self-taught artists. And I'm also currently training to be a coach and NLP practitioner.
Oh, fantastic. So we're both doing coaching qualifications. That's really exciting. It's awesome getting to work with people, isn't it? And sort of cheer them on and help them work towards their goals and dreams.
Absolutely. Supporting others and opening up space for others so that they can tap into their voice is kind of really key for me personally and also in my practice.
I can imagine that you love helping other people find their voice and tell their stories because you've got such a powerful story to share. You've been on a real journey in your life, haven't you? Like literally living in lots of different countries, and we're both based in Sheffield now, and it's such a great city to be in, isn't it? There's so much happening sort of culturally. You look like you're always involved in lots of exciting projects. But what would you mind maybe sharing a bit of your journey to getting where you are today, being in Sheffield and the things that you're involved with?
Sure, absolutely. So I was born in Bulgaria and lived, as you mentioned, lived in several different countries and cultures until 2011 when I came to the UK. I was originally coming here to finish a master's in European studies, of all things. But really, I had the bug for cultural events and performance, and theatre was kind of a bit of a constant in my life since I was a kid. So I really saw for the first time when I arrived in London how people here in the UK were able to make a profession out of theatre and performance. So I ran with the circus and didn't go for kind of like the European studies kind of route of maybe working at the European Union level or doing consulting, like that standard path that some people take. Instead, I started working with the CASA Latin American Theatre Festival, the only Latin American theatre festival in the UK. And for the last 10 years, I've been involved in different projects, organizations at different levels, all to do more or less with kind of that kind of passion of intercultural work and working to amplify other people's voices and journeys. And I started to specialize mainly in producing because that was a space where one, without an art education, could perhaps find some paid work and make connections and contacts. And then slowly started to move towards what I really wanted to do since that first moment, which was directing and facilitating and telling stories and using those stories to affect change in the world and hopefully make the world a little bit better. But throughout the last 10 years, I've worked in the charitable sector, in art and homelessness as well, in fundraising, as a duty manager in theatres. And then 2 years ago, I moved to Sheffield, partly because my partner is doing a PhD here, but partly because it was time to leave London behind and kind of maybe tap into my own personal voice a little bit more and hear my buzz and see what that is as a story and what it tells. And so, being in Sheffield has opened up a lot of new avenues, a lot of new kind of thinking, and all in all, I think it's one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Yes, it's the place to be, isn't it? There's so much going on, and we met at a networking group a month or two ago, didn't we? And it was such an amazing mix of these fascinating women from all different cultures and backgrounds. And it's one of the best meetings I've been to. Like, we met, and I could just tell you had such a wealth of like knowledge and experience, and it's so lovely to have you on to hear more about that. I think you've got such a fascinating story, and I was reading some of the articles that you wrote on your website about the different cultures you've experienced, and that's so fascinating, and that must have given you such an amazing wealth of experience and just wisdom and knowledge to then bring into your work. And I know that you love to bring about change through your work, which is something I'd love to chat to you about in a minute. But I just like to ask all my guests, Laura, this question around what living life well means to you. What do you think of when you hear that question?
Well, funny enough, when I came to Sheffield, shortly after I came to Sheffield, I got quite ill, and I joined a peer learning. As it happened at that moment, I was joining a peer learning group, and they're the Sheffield Pioneers. So shout out to my pioneers. They really helped me, without knowing at first, they really helped me go through that. And you had to have like one driving question for that learning marathon, as it's called. And I can't even tell you what my question is. I've completely forgotten. But I remember one of the first sessions was kind of it was a whole kind of half a meditation, half a facilitated thing. And I just remember having to go out of the room where I was in, because it was during the pandemic, so we were remote, and we were asked then to come into the room, saying out loud or thinking about that motto that we were kind of working on. And I came up with a healthy, happy, healthy, and creative life. And for me, that's kind of synthesized what living life well means. Health above all else, because I think without health, both individual health but also society health, I think you can't do much. And health for me comes first, and it's something very cultural. My family and in Bulgaria is like, we always, congratulate ourselves for good health, or like wish ourselves good health. And then happy and creative. And creativity for me is essential for a happy life and a healthy life. So it's almost like the glue that holds it together.
They're so good. So they're kind of like your pillars of well-being, aren't they? Sort of pursuing happiness, health, and creativity. And you take any of those away, then we're not a whole person, are we? Like, we're nothing without our health, but we're not healthy without also finding joy and creativity in our day-to-day, are we? So they're so intrinsically linked, aren't they? And that's why I love the whole idea of the connection between our sort of mind, body, and soul health, because you can't really have one without the other, can you? So I love that you were able to identify those three things that were the most important to you. And I'm always so impressed that you do manage to look after all of those aspects of your well-being in your work and in your life. Like, I see you going to the gym and doing your workouts, and then doing all your amazing projects, and then those are the things that bring you they're the things that bring you alive, aren't they, and keep you well and keep you thriving. So it's very inspiring to see.
Oh, thank you. But I have to say the gym is a new thing, though. And it comes with it comes with the, I wasn't at all like a gym person, at all. But I discovered, I'm going to do another shout out, Mud and Muscle, who's my trainer, Laura, who trains as Mud and Muscle. And it was just, again, another revelation. And it's linked to the thing about how do you balance all this. And for me, one of the answers to that was really putting boundaries around what work means, and working less became really important. And by working less, that opened up some space, and I didn't have hobbies because I made theatre my hobby into my profession. So I was like, okay, if I have more time, when I have more time, what the hell do I do with it? And that was my biggest obstacle to working less. And I found, amongst other things, I found training, and specifically strength training, really, really engaging. but it's new. It's a new thing.
Well, it's very inspiring. And I have to say, since moving to Sheffield, my fitness is probably the one area of my wellness that has slipped, because I used to love running, and then I moved to Sheffield and there's just hills everywhere. So it really puts me off. But I need to get back into it. So you are inspiring me, Laura. I'll find a way that doesn't have to be running. I'll find another way that doesn't involve running up hills.
I heard about this not a long time ago about, so when you're working with elevation, to change the way you train in your runs, because
Okay.
I was never a runner, but I like a challenge, and I especially like a challenge when there's like not peer pressure, but like peer kind of support involved. And so I happen to have run a couple of half marathons,
Wow,
which is crazy to say again, because I'm really not a sporty person, really. But the way you train is obviously by increasing your lengths and the time you spend. But I've heard that when you're in a elevation space like Sheffield that has lots of hills, by changing the way you train, you can adapt to your environment. So if that's something that brings you joy, Joanne, you should find just a different way of running.
You're right. I need to stop using the hills as an excuse, don't I? I need to look into that. Yeah. That's been my excuse for the last year. Don't take it away from me. No, I'm joking. I will look into that. That sounds good. So you mentioned this idea of working less. And I mean, that sounds great. I think we'd all like to work less and have more time for the things that we love, that we're passionate about. I also hear you saying that your work became your hobby, and I think that can be such a risk, especially as women in business. We love what we do, and that's great, but it can almost take over our lives and take over every minute and every space in our lives. So please talk to us about this idea of working less. And that's really something that I was excited to talk to you about on this podcast, because I see you talking about it on your social media. So tell us about that journey and how you've got to the point where you feel now you can still do the things that you're passionate about, feel like you're making a difference, feel like you're achieving your sort of career, your business goals, working towards those things, but also carving out this time to do the other things that support your well-being.
Yeah. So working less has really become almost like an obsession, because I like getting obsessed with stuff and researching and testing out and figuring out how it might work, and a bit of a passion, because it is also a political message. Our earth needs us to work less. We need to work less to take better care of each other and oneself. So it's really both a social commitment, a political commitment, a well-being commitment, and so I really see it through all these lenses. But first, let me tell you about working too much. You know that in the creative industries, what I do, what my ideal role is, you don't have that as a kind of a full-time permanent position with a salary. Being a director, directing or facilitating plays, unless you're on there's very few specific ways of doing that on a kind of a more stable contract, or you're running a venue, and running a venue might not be for everyone, and also it's a path that only a few people find themselves in a position of doing, right? So you have to be freelance if you want to do that. Now, when you're freelance and you want to do that, you're not going to be directing a play or directing plays 365 days a year. You have to diversify. So that hence why I've been a producer, I've been a duty manager, a fundraiser, I've worked in hospitality. In my case, it's not anything special. It's unfortunately is the norm. So already as a freelance worker, you have these precarious working conditions that surround what you do. So that's kind of the starting base. So what that results, unfortunately, is in really long working hours in multiple jobs for very many years to be able to make ends meet. And also the sensation that you can't say no to projects. Because if you say no now, that might mean that you're not on someone's books, or they forget about you, or you're not able to build your portfolio, or whatever it might be. So you enter this kind of cycle of saying yes to a lot of things and not knowing anymore where the boundaries are. So that's one aspect that is really linked to the precarity of the working conditions in the creative industry. The other side is you're fueled by passion and commitment and wanting to like change the world. So it's very difficult to say no in those circumstances, right? Because you're like, if I don't do this, if I don't raise this money, we're not able to do this project. We're not able to help the people that we're helping. Especially when I was working in Arts and Homelessness, I was both employed in Arts and Homelessness International, and I was having my creative practice. And even just talking about it, you can sense that it's just mounting, and a lot of things were happening, and a lot of impossibility to say no to things. So that for me, there was a cycles of burnout. And again, this is unfortunately nothing special. But I guess my moment of waking up and realizing that this couldn't go on was when I moved to Sheffield and I got really ill. I had to stop for 3 months. And for me, stopping for 3 months felt like stopping for 10 years, because I had never been in that space of not being able to work or do the things that I have to do. And it was really scary. So from that place, I was like, okay, boundaries need to be reinstated. And I like to say there is, life is not a dress rehearsal. There's one life and there's one you, and we only have one body and one mind. So we need to really take care of them, because they're the ones that are going to get us through that one life, right? So what's important to me? What are my values? What I want to achieve really deeply, truly, like me, Laura, not the executive producer, not the this company or that company, but me as an individual. So through that work, I kind of like, it felt like weeding out or like tuning down some of the noise and really focusing on what I wanted to achieve. And for me, what was clear is that I wanted to be my own boss, and I wanted to be 100% freelance, and where possible, not have to have multiple hats anymore. And that was possible to me because I was in Sheffield, which, let's face it, compared to London, our overheads were really like different. Rent is cheaper, bills are cheaper, at least for the time being, because obviously now everything is going up, right? But that difference allowed for me to do that shift. And then moving on to the practical stuff is realizing that saying no is not going to make you disappear. That if people want you and want your expertise or are interested, they're not going to disappear either. And that it's okay to, balance out what you're offered or what you're seeking, and saying, okay, what is a priority to me and why? And prioritize that. And then there may be other stuff that aren't a priority. And again, in a way, kind of like really practically, I committed to a 4-day working week. My brain works in that way. I like, how can I say, I like routine and set rules, because the freelance life is quite, one day you may do one thing and the next day you may be doing another. So if I could set myself a routine and some principles, both about what my practice is and how I work, then I could be like, this is how I work, this is how the things are, and now I abide by this. I was going to say rules. It's not rules. It's just like, this is how I want to operate. And also thinking about the brand and the business, and saying, this is my business, and my business is open for business 4 days a week. And the rest of the time, we're doing other things, which are so important to foster creativity. Because believe it or not, creativity happens when you're bored. Creativity happens whilst I'm doing the dishes and suddenly I have a brilliant idea. Creativity happens when I am at the gym, I'm lifting, and on my way back, I'm like, I know this problem that I've been having for 3 days. Now I have a solution for it. And also having space for personal development. I started learning about coaching, about NLP, and that's just making me a better freelancer, a better artist, a better, partner, a better friend. So I'm all up for it. I'm all into working less.
That's so good. Oh, I feel like there was just some real nuggets in there. And yeah, I love what you just said about creativity happen when we're bored. You're so right. And we don't let ourselves get bored anymore because we fill our time, we fill every minute with doing things, scrolling on our phones, shopping, working, and the world misses out because of it, doesn't it? It misses out on the art and the ideas and the creative things that should be happening in those places.
Yeah.
That's so good. And I think of that as similar to the idea of rest, like having downtime, giving yourself full permission to have time away from your work and your business. And that's when the ideas come, isn't it? And you talked about how doing less is not just good for us, but it helps us to take care of others and also helps us take care of the world. Could you expand a bit on that? Because I can see the benefits. Like personally, I'd love to do less. I'd love to have 3 days off a week. Like that sounds amazing. I can imagine how good I would feel if I had 3 days to rest and be creative and follow my passions and exercise. And I'm probably something I'm working towards more. I normally have like at least 1 day a week where I just completely switch off and don't have to do anything in my diary. But how could you expand on that idea of how it benefits the world around us as well as ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's evidence for this and how useful it is both to the economy and the community and the ecology that we work less. Obviously, everyone's circumstances will be different, but already the fact of like if you're not commuting, and especially if you're not using your car to go to that 5th day of work, that's a lot of CO2 that doesn't get used. If you're living locally whilst you are on your free time, if you're spending your money in the community, that has an immediate effect. So, my example, for instance, I'm now going to the gym often. That means a fee that I'm paying to a trainer who is local. She's another local woman. We're helping each other. I'm growing her business. She's growing my muscles. In the sense of when you're caring for others, for me it's not the case because my parents are abroad and I'm here in the UK. But if you have time to spend with your family, with your elders, with your neighbors, with your community, maybe you go to church more, or you pick up volunteering. That creates social bonds that perhaps have been eroded because we tend to live somewhere and then go to work somewhere and then go to socialize somewhere else. So we kind of come back and we only sleep where we live. We don't socialize. COVID that changed that when we were meant to like stay, and there were so beautiful acts of connecting with your local area, but working less would do that, or working from home even. The benefits are similar. And also, there is again evidence about increased well-being of being focused on something different, whatever that is, your family, your hobbies, meditation, doing nothing, whatever that means to you, opens up, calms your nervous system, so you're better able to deal with stresses that might arise. You're healthier, and you're able to make connections and see things in a different way. And that's where we say creativity is born out of boredom, because when the mind is idle, when your nervous system is relaxed, you are able to pick up on stimuli in a different way and make connections in a different way. And if you are a creative individual, then also new and wonderful things can arise. And if also you're meeting other people locally or your family, wherever it might be, then these social interactions also support kind of a healthier community. And again, less carbon supports the earth and so on. So it's a really virtuous cycle that happens.
That's so good. I really hadn't thought about the impact it would have in terms of community and the environment for us to do less and work less. But that makes so much sense. And I think community is something that we lack so much in our society now. Like, we're meant to live in community, we're meant to live in like circles of support, aren't we, that we miss now. But actually spending more time in our communities could be the start of that. And it sounds like all of this is about almost getting back to basic, getting back to the way life should be lived for us to live a wholesome, healthy life. And also sort of living from a place of like faith and abundance rather than fear and lack. Like some of the things you were saying about being able to have better boundaries and say more to things rather than living out of that place of fear of like, I have to say yes to everything or else I'll miss out or else I'm not going to please people. But actually it's almost like taking back control of your life, isn't it? Thinking about, like you were saying, what your values are, what it is you want your life to count for, and only saying yes to those things and having those boundaries around your time to give yourself that respect as well, isn't it? How do you manage that sort of tension of being a creative person working in the creative industries where time is very flexible? It's not like a Monday to Friday 9 till 5, is it? I mean, I guess a lot of things happen at weekends and in theatre and in the creative arts. Like how do you manage your sort of diary, bearing in mind you want to keep these 3 days to yourself to do the things that you love, but you also want to pursue your career? How do you manage that tension?
That's a really good question, and the key to everything is flexibility, but in a way like clever flexibility in respecting those boundaries. So I, for instance, don't work either on Mondays or Fridays, and I have the ability to switch on and off depending on what the project needs. And to give you an example, last week, because I'm casting for a new project, I had to meet people, and there was a big volume of meetings that needed to happen. So I had half a day off on Monday, half a day off on Friday. There are moments in time that I have to give away the idea of a 4-day week because the project is running for 10 days straight. But then I'm always planning in advance and recuperating the rest after that. Another big key learning, I attended the REST course, which sounds a little bit counterproductive to go on a course to rest. But it was really informative. And one of the key takeaways for me was to understand rest as a practice that you do throughout the day. And that really changed my perception. I was always like work, and then collapse. Or work, and then holiday. And inevitably during the holiday, you're ill. And I'm sure that many people will recognize that. And so thinking about rest as a practice really changed my perspective.
Yeah.
As regards to the industry, I think that's where my boundaries and my commitment get tested a lot, because we let those boundaries bleed, because sometimes you're collaborating with people who feel like friends, but they are their friends or they're really close colleagues, or you jump on a project with someone and you have a really intense relationship, and sometimes it's difficult to assert your boundaries and not feel like, I was going to say something that you probably need to bleep later, but not feel bad about it. So that's when I get my boundaries do get tested and my commitments do get tested. But it's all about the balance and the flexibility. And also you still have to believe that it's in your hands. And I think that's really hard when opportunities are few and far between, where, you don't know if anyone will call you, if after February or if after August you will have income or whatever. So don't get me wrong, it's not easy. But at the end of the day, you have to believe that, the ball is in your court and you are proactive, interesting, individual business freelancer, and that there's a saying in Bulgarian, for each passenger there is a train. And it's normally like said in relationship game now. It's like every train has its passenger. Okay. Don't worry, you'll find like a soulmate. But I think that there is something to it in business as well, that every passenger has its own train, and sometimes you have to build your own train, and it's going to take a while. And I think especially a lot of migrant artists have done that and just build their niche and build their connections. But you just have to believe that the ball is in your court and you're doing the right things and you're putting the right message and you're adding the right value to people. And then that flexibility is just key. And that flexibility comes with diversification. If I was only relying on directing plays, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. But I direct plays. I enjoy putting projects together and pitching, and I did a AR exhibition with an artist. I collaborated. Collaboration is key to that diversification.
Yeah.
So it's about stretching what it means to you to do what you do and finding new exciting ways to do that, so that it fits in your diary and in your vision of who you are and what you want to do in this world.
So good. So many good things you say, Laura. I could pick loads of them out, but I love a couple of the terms you use. I love the idea of clever flexibility, like having our boundaries, but also being flexible, and that's okay. And like there will be times of our life that are busier, but I love the idea that you sort of recuperate that rest time. And you mentioned having rest as a practice, and I think that's so true. We have to intentionally rest. Like it sounds counterproductive, but you've got to plan it. You've got to put it in your diary, and or else we just won't do it. Well, we will fill our time with other things. And I read a post today by Dr. Hyman, who I follow on Instagram, and he was talking about learning how to actively rest. So having rest time, but doing something in that time that recharges you. So not just resting, but watching TV all the time, like doing things like meditating or learning a new skill. Still help you switch off from all the stressful things in your life, but they're actually really positive practices as well. So I love those ideas. And I know that you're really passionate about using what you do to bring about change in the world, change for good, like through your work, through everything that you do. I mean, is this something that you would like to see practice more commonly, like in the workplace? Coming from the government. I know in some countries, I think it's France, is it, that they want to trial this idea of a 4-day week, and that I don't know anything about it, but from what I've heard, staff are just as productive, if not more productive, in 4 days than 5. They have a much higher sense of work, like job satisfaction, and a much better work-life balance. Is that something you would like to see come about in our culture?
Yeah, to be completely honest with you, I think I've lost faith in the government doing anything that might be of remote benefit of the kind of median worker in this country. Sure. So kind of like the thing that I would really hope that people will do is kind of leave aside the excuses for not trialing new things and investigating a little bit and playing a little bit, and I think it's difficult to make changes to the labor market as it's called, because so many of us take value and their identity from work. Sure. But I just really want to encourage people to think of themselves beyond what they do for work, and where else do they get value from and identity from. And one of the things that I would love businesses to do is to and any organization or government is to apply a little bit more of this idea of co-production to what they do. And what co-production or co-creation means is taking the decisions with the people that are mostly impacted of these decisions, and for those people to be equitably involved in the decision-making process from the get-go. So that means in the sense of a business and working hours, right? Or business and working less. How can you bring together the workforce and have a really honest discussion about what it means to work in that business, and where we may look at reducing working hours so that for the benefit of everyone? That is quite revolutionary, because some of the businesses are very hierarchical. So what is convenient maybe for senior management is perceived not to be convenient for people on the grassroots. But for me, in any situation where we can flatten that pyramid, will be will be ideal. So we have more honest conversations and more co-creation, so that the rules and regulations really fit the people that are benefiting or that are going to be usually suffering the impact of that. So this is why I don't feel that government may be the best place to enact those changes, because the people in government are very different from the people who benefit the most from reducing the working hours of their working days. And I don't think that these two types of people are able to talk to each other in the UK. The class system is so strong in this country that there is a massive distance between kind of politicians, elites, and people on the grassroots. But if we could find spaces where those pyramids are flattened, that would be amazing. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs actually have the tools and the power to do that and find ways. And maybe it's one Friday every 2 weeks. Doesn't need to be everything from the first step. Doesn't mean to be like revolutionary. It could be a little bit and just exploring and seeing how it would work. But if we're talking about bigger changes, for me, universal basic income, for instance, is something that will completely precipitate that this working less idea, and I think it will be just really interesting seeing it being rolled out. There's several pilots going on. There's one in Ireland, and they piloted some specific set income for specific people, I think in Wales as well. And it would just be grand to see that rolled out a little bit more widely.
Yes, I feel like you're being very diplomatic in your opinion of our political system, which I appreciate, but I also can see the frustrations, and I hear that. But what I hear, which is very empowering, is that there's still things we can do, even if it feels hopeless that things will change from the top down, which, like you're saying, are possibly unlikely. There are still things that are within our control as employees or entrepreneurs, just as humans, that are within our control to create change and make a difference. Just things like
Absolutely.
conversations we can have like this, maybe conversations we can have within our organisations that we're part of, in our communities, and also in our own lives. Like the things that we've talked about today are things that we can be in control of in our own life, in terms of having good boundaries, knowing what our values are. And even if, maybe you have to work Monday to Friday and that's just what you need to do right now, and we totally respect that. Maybe there's just pockets of time that you can start to free up, where you can start to pursue the things that you love and that you're passionate about. And even by doing that, and you being a happier person by doing that, you will then have an impact on those around you.
Yeah, and even in the creative industry, colleagues are still, I was going to say forced. They're still given contracts that are Monday to Saturday. There's still Now is Panto season. There's so many performers who would not have Christmas with their families because they're on an insane schedule for really not a lot of money. So I guess my other kind of call, just to use this platform, is for in the cultural industry, especially in theatre, because I know it and I've been advocating for this, is please pay your freelancers well and on time. If you can't pay people well, then consider not doing the project, because otherwise we're in a perpetual cycle of underpaying, undervaluing ourselves, overworking, and it's never going to change. And it's sometimes difficult to think in that way, because I have been in that position as well. But sometimes it's like, how can we do a better job and compensate people fairly, especially now with the cost of living crisis? And for me, again, it's about flattening the pyramid. If people at the top, there's a concentration of resources at the top of that pyramid. We need more redistribution, both of power and resources. There you got me into like the
Yes.
the big picture changes.
Come on, I love it. I love your passion to make a difference. It's inspiring. I love being around people like you, because it inspires me too. So, and we have to look out for each other. We have to speak up for each other. And yeah, I hope that you hear, if you feel trapped in a situation, that there are options. And I think, Laura, you've sort of shown that, like you've sort of reclaimed your power to, define your own boundaries and to just think about what you want your life to look like and the difference that you do want to make. Like hopefully we don't feel trapped, and that there are options.
Yeah, I was gonna say, obviously, this comes with a caveat that I'm also incredibly privileged. I'm a white person in a white body. I'm able-bodied as well. So although I was ill, I was able to get better and get back to work. For lots of people, that situation will be quite different. So I just wanted to acknowledge that privilege and that understanding, and that I've been thinking about this for a decade. So that was one point. And then the second point, I don't want to leave before giving a shout out to my producer, Claire Gilbert, and the importance of having allies in what you do, and people that understand what you're about and are able to help you enact it. Claire will do schedules with me now, and she will put rest days for both me and for her. She will look after my well-being as well as the project, and that's been kind of like building it in and getting people who you work with that on the same wavelength, that if one day you suddenly wake up and forget who you are and start kind of falling back into old patterns, they're able to bring you back and say, hey, this thing that you inspire me to do, and we've been discussing and we've been enacting, you're not doing it now, so can we do it? Or you need it. And so building your tribe is so important.
Oh, you're so right. It's so powerful to have a positive tribe around you. And I hope that people find that in this space, this is a positive community to be part of, where people are cheering you on and we've got each other's back. And I totally hold that tension on this podcast of the privilege that I have as a white woman who has enough of a comfortable lifestyle to be able to choose to look after my own well-being. And I get that not everyone even has that, but I've been at points in my life where I felt bad for having that and almost paralyzed by that. And I felt that sort of inner voice reminding me that it's almost my duty, if we have that choice to look after ourselves, that we can be strong for the person that is not strong right now. We can lend that hand to that person to pull them up when we're going to need pulled up at another point in our lives. And we do no one any good by not taking care of ourselves, do we, with what we have?
Absolutely.
So, we definitely hold that tension in this space. But I hope whatever point you're at in life, you have heard something today that is helpful for you. Even if it's just one thing, one little nugget you've got, something you can put into place. Just that idea of taking time out to care for yourself so that you can then have an impact on the world around you is so powerful.
Yeah.
So, Laura, that's been amazing. Like, I've learned so much today. I love what you have to share. I think it's so powerful and so much food for thought. I think I'm going to have to listen to this one back a couple of times myself, and I think people will get so much from it. Just lots to chew on, I think, and think over what we can put into practice in our own lives, and then what we can do to make a difference around us is so inspiring. So, Laura, how can we find you? Like, how can we stay in touch? Or is there any projects you can got going on at the moment that you want to tell us about? Or if people want to carry on this conversation with you, how can they do that?
Of course. But just before, your remark really made me think of something a good friend of mine used to say to me. I was working in arts and homelessness, and so very often I would see people and work with people and then go back home and feel absolutely awful because I had a home to go to, right?
Yeah.
And she will always say to me, put on mask first. You know how they say in the yes. flights? Own mask first, because if you weren't in that position and you weren't taking care of yourself, you would not be able to be out here helping people, making connections, doing creativity with them, changing policy, exactly. Whatever we will do. So put on mask exactly. first has always stayed with me as a really good advice.
So true.
Regarding getting in touch, you can go and visit my website, which is Laura, Lora Krasteva, which is Krasteva, so laurakrasteva.com. You can get in touch there. There you can sign up to my newsletter, and I share little articles, little kind of thought processes, once a month. And you can find me on socials as well at Laura Krasteva, Instagram, Twitter, and maybe TikTok one day. Why not? As regards to projects, I'm currently working on a devised piece of political theatre called Becoming British, looking at what is national identity, Britishness, and belonging from the perspective of immigrants. I'm starting the R&D next week. Is that next week already? The 5th of December. Oh my God, like time flies. So look out for that. Probably I hope, at this time next year, by the time we make it and we pitch it to venues and we get it programmed. And I'm also open for bookings in terms of like coaching and NLP. So if you like what you listen to, you want to like tap into your own voice, you are perhaps a woman that is like thinking about leadership and like going out there and exploring your new world, get in touch. Specifically really interested in working with women and immigrants or both. So if that's you, do get in touch. And if you want a director or facilitator, give me a ring.
Oh, amazing. That's so good. And I'd recommend checking your website out. Some of the articles in there are so thought-provoking. I read the article you'd written about becoming British and found it really moving, like the idea of having to jump through all these hoops just to be sort of accepted in a society. Maybe quite angry and upset, but it was also really beautifully written. So
oh, thank you.
Check it out.
Yeah, there is actually also an exhibition that exists called Becoming British. Is some of my work and 4 other artists, is open for bookings. So if you have a space anywhere in the UK or abroad, it's ready to go. It packs really, really easily, and you can have it, and we can bring it to you. So yeah, again, give me a ring.
Fantastic. And just for fun, Laura, would you tell us what you would choose for your last meal on Earth?
Oh my gosh, this question, I've been thinking about it all day, salivating all day. So I'm a Gemini, and as a good Gemini, there's 2 sides. So I'm going to walk you through 2 sides, hopefully not taking too much of your time. One side was immediately, I should probably say, my mum's, cooking, traditional Bulgarian meal, like a lunch that starts at 1 o'clock and finishes like 7 hours later, and you just go in circles and you eat your cold meats and your cheeses and your banica and your all the wonderful Bulgarian dishes, your shopska salata. If you have Bulgarian listeners, probably already salivating and know exactly what it means, and you probably end up under the table because you've been drinking throughout rakia and all wonderful things. But the other side of me remembered one of the most incredible cooking experiences, or eating experiences rather, because I didn't cook that. It was in Koyasan in Japan. We were staying with monks who do their own food, and they're all vegan, and you kind of stay in the monastery. And I had never experienced something so wonderful, and it was like very shogun-esque, and the whole ceremony of eating your dinner was wonderful. So in the end, I think the Japanese experience wins, and I would like to have all the traditional Japanese food, from the yakitori in a little kind of like drinking hole, to octopus bowls, to the wonderfully presented vegan food, to the sushi and the fried chicken. I want it all. I want it all Japanese throughout the day, and I can die happy.
That sounds amazing. Now I'm hungry. Now I'm salivating. Oh, Laura, it's been so amazing to chat to you. I'm sure everyone will want to stay in touch with you and just follow you as you continue this awesome journey you're on. So thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your wisdom and your thoughts, and just giving us so much food for thought today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you so much for listening today. I really hope you've had some inspiration to look after yourself, body, mind and soul, and feel as well as you deserve to do. Please remember to subscribe and share this podcast if it's been helpful for you. And I'll see you again soon with another episode and some more amazing guests. Take care.